You were told that if you owned more, you'd feel more. More freedom, more power, more happiness. But what if the very things you own, the house, the title, the relationship, the reputation, are quietly owning you? What if the cost of having everything is losing yourself along the way? Welcome to Trandy Wisdom, where every story begins with a truth we've almost forgotten. We live in a world that teaches us to chase success, chase status, chase security, and when we finally gather all the pieces, the car, the career, the corner office, we look around and ask, why do I still feel empty? Buddhism offers no condemnation of the world. It does not shame wealth or comfort. But it does ask a far more dangerous question. Who are you when there's nothing left to own? This teaching doesn't begin with renunciation. It begins with seeing clearly. It begins with understanding that peace is not the prize at the end of accumulation, but the presence that appears when accumulation is no longer needed. In this episode, we'll explore the invisible weight of ownership, how what we possess can quietly possess us, and how letting go, not of things, but of clinging, might be the first real taste of freedom. 1. Ownership is more than material things. The desert holds no secrets for those who walk it slowly. A single footprint in the sand can tell a story of direction, pressure, weight, and presence. To the untrained eye, it's just a dent in the earth. But to one who looks deeply, it is evidence of a life moving through the vast and impermanent. In the same way, the concept of ownership, so embedded in modern life, seems obvious, even harmless. Yet beneath its surface lies a tension most never notice, a tension that Buddhism has examined for over 2,500 years. Ownership in the modern world is the currency of identity. We are taught from childhood to define ourselves by what we accumulate. My home, my phone, my job, my success. Even relationships become statements of possession. My partner, my child, my friends. The language we use reveals the architecture of our attachments. But Buddhism challenges this structure at its foundation. It asks, what do you truly own? If everything you touch is impermanent, to the Buddha, the issue was never the mere act of possessing something, but the subtle grasping of the heart. This grasping, called upadana in Pali, is what transforms a tool into a trap, a relationship into a cage, a moment into a memory we cannot release. It's the psychological weight we carry when we think, this is mine, and the suffering that arises when it's taken away, or even threatened. We are not born craving ownership. A newborn child reaches for what it needs, but lets go as soon as its need is met. It is taught, not by nature but by culture, that security lies in possession. Over time, that teaching becomes belief, and belief becomes reflex. By adulthood, we rarely pause to question the grip we maintain over things, people, roles, and outcomes. The house is no longer just a shelter. It becomes a fortress of identity. The job is no longer a way to contribute. It becomes a measure of self-worth. The body is no longer a vessel for experience. It becomes a project of perfection or a prison of comparison. Buddhism offers a different map of the self, one where nothing is truly ours, not even the body we inhabit. Everything we hold is on loan. Everything we touch is in transition. What we call mine is simply a temporary arrangement of conditions, causes and effects that come together for a time and then dissolve. We may lease a moment of joy, a flash of achievement, a season of belonging, but the lease always expires. And the pain we feel at its ending is not from the loss itself, but from our belief that it ever belonged to us. To see ownership clearly, one must slow down, like the desert traveler who traces the wind's path by the way sand has shifted. We must become sensitive to the subtle ways attachment hides itself in ordinary life. The way we feel possessive of an idea in conversation. The way we grow anxious when a friend grows distant. The way we cling to our image on social media, fearing invisibility more than disconnection. These are not financial transactions. They are spiritual ones, and they drain us far more than money ever could. A Buddhist monk once asked, "What do you own that cannot be lost?" The answer is silence, but most people are not ready for it. We fear the stillness that arises when the noise of ownership is turned down. If I am not what I own, who am I? If my status, my beauty, my accomplishments fade, what remains? These are questions that shake the scaffolding of self, but they are also invitations. Invitations to discover a life rooted not in having, but in being. Being is simple, but not easy. It requires an unlearning of everything modern life has taught us. It means noticing when we reach for our phone not out of necessity, but because silence makes us uncomfortable. It means recognizing the sorrow that comes when we cannot afford something, not because we need it, but because we've linked our worth to ownership. It means learning to walk into a room without needing to impress, to love without needing to possess, to succeed without needing to prove. The Buddha taught the path of liberation as one of seeing clearly. And in this clarity, ownership loses its seductive edge. You can still own a home, drive a car, raise a family, but you no longer treat these things as extensions of your ego. You no longer cling. You live with gratitude, not grasping. You care for what you have, but you are not defined by it. And when it is gone, as all things go, you do not collapse. You breathe. You let go. You continue. In Buddhist monastic tradition, the robes and alms bowl are often the only possessions a monk has. But this simplicity is not about poverty. It is about freedom. Each item is treated with reverence, but not obsession. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is clung to. There is joy in enough, and enough is always less than what the world tells us to seek. To most, such a life seems extreme, but the principle can be lived in any context. You do not have to be a monk to practice non-attachment. You only need to pay attention. You only need to ask, gently and often, am I using this? Or is it using me? Am I loving this person? Or am I needing them to complete me? Am I building a life? Or am I just building walls around my insecurity? Ownership, though, is more than material. It is a posture of the mind, a grip of the heart. And until we loosen it, we remain at the mercy of gain and loss. We remain trapped in a world where self-worth rises and falls with possessions, where love is confused with control, and where freedom is mistaken for accumulation. But when we begin to see clearly, we rediscover something ancient and immediate. The breath is not owned, but it is enough. The moment is not ours, but it is alive. The self is not a possession, but a process, fluid, shifting, open. And in that realization, we begin to taste freedom. 2. The hidden cost. A mind that cannot rest. Some burdens do not live on our backs. They dwell in the space between thoughts, in the tightness behind our smiles, in the silence we avoid before sleep. There is a weight that modern life carries, not in the form of war or famine, but in the relentless occupation of the mind. This is the hidden cost of ownership, not what we pay with money, but what we forfeit in peace. The world rarely tells us the full story. It celebrates what is gained, not what is quietly lost. A new house is praised for its square footage, but not for the anxiety it plants in the night. A promotion is admired for the title it grants, but not for the loneliness it brings. A luxury car gleams in the sun, but the mind that drives it is already calculating the next upgrade. Beneath every possession lies a contract, one we never read, but always sign. And at the bottom of it, in small invisible script, it reads, "In exchange for this, you offer your attention." In Buddhist philosophy, the mind is not a machine to be optimized, nor a problem to be solved. It is a garden, sensitive, alive, in need of tending. But when overgrown by craving, comparison, and clinging, it becomes a forest of restlessness. We cannot sit still. We cannot be where we are. Even in moments of apparent relaxation, the mind rehearses imaginary conversations, replays the past, anticipates the future, checks the phone. There is no pause. There is only pursuit. This pursuit is not driven by necessity, but by illusion. The illusion that once we acquire enough money, enough praise, enough certainty, then rest will come. But rest that depends on conditions will never be stable. Rest that arrives only after control is achieved is not peace. It is exhaustion in disguise. It lasts as long as the conditions do, and when they change, as all things do, the mind returns to its chase. The cost of this endless chase is not paid in dollars, but in attention spans, fractured relationships, chronic tension, and the inability to sit with oneself in silence. Meditation is often misunderstood as a technique. In Buddhism, it is an encounter, a meeting with the mind we've neglected, the feelings we've suppressed, the truths we've avoided. When one first sits in silence, they are not met with bliss, but with the full noise of a life lived without pause. Regret, worry, insecurity, all rise to the surface, not as enemies, but as signals. The mind, like the body, speaks through symptoms. Restlessness is not a flaw. It is a message. It is saying, something inside is carrying too much. Ownership, when rooted in attachment, becomes not a source of joy, but a source of background anxiety. Even as we gain, we worry. Will it last? Will someone take it? Will I be enough if it's gone? This is the mind of upadana, of clinging. It does not sleep deeply. It dreams of loss, even in comfort. It forgets the difference between having and needing. It turns the mirror of life into a window of fear. But the most dangerous cost is this: the erosion of presence. When our mind is owned by what it owns, we are never fully here. We eat while scrolling. We walk while worrying. We listen while waiting to speak. Presence becomes rare. And with its absence, life becomes blur. Years pass like wind through reeds, moving, but not lived. The Buddha offered no condemnation of the world, only a map for returning to the present. He taught that the mind, once understood, becomes a friend. But to befriend it, we must first observe it. Like a scientist in a rainforest, we sit quietly, watching the habits of thought. We see how desire arises, how it inflates the ego, how it collapses into fear. We do not judge the mind. We study it. We understand that the desire to own is not evil. It is mistaken. It is trying to fill a space that cannot be filled by possession, only by peace. To rest the mind does not mean to stop thinking. It means to return thinking to its rightful place, not as master, but as servant. Thoughts come and go, like clouds in the sky, but beneath them, the sky remains, spacious, unmoved. A mind at rest is not a silent mind. It is a mind that no longer believes every thought, no longer clings to every fear, no longer races after every image of success. This rest is cultivated slowly. It begins in simple ways: drinking tea without distraction, watching the breath without control, walking without destination. In these small acts, the mind learns a new rhythm, a quieter one, a kinder one. And slowly, the background noise softens. We begin to hear again, not just the world outside, but the world within. It's important to say, ownership is not wrong. The teachings do not suggest a life of rejection, but a life of wisdom. One can have possessions, but mustn't be possessed by them. One can hold things, but lightly, as a traveler carries only what is needed for the journey. The rest is let go, not out of disdain, but out of clarity. The hidden cost of ownership is not always visible from the outside. On the surface, there may be smiles, trophies, luxury, but beneath, the mind may be like a clenched fist, tight, tired, unable to let go. No one else may see it, but we feel it. In the racing heart before a meeting, in the knot of jealousy when someone else succeeds, in the tight breath at night, wondering what happens if it all disappears. But just as there is a hidden cost, there is also a hidden freedom. A freedom that comes not from having more, but from needing less. A freedom that is not granted by the world, but uncovered within. This is the freedom the Buddha spoke of, not dramatic, not heroic, but quietly revolutionary. To rest is not to abandon life. It is to return to it, fully, gently, awake. This kind of rest cannot be bought. It cannot be earned through achievement. It must be invited, moment by moment, by letting go of the belief that we must always chase something to become whole. And when we no longer chase, we arrive. We arrive in this breath, this body, this moment. And finally, the mind rests, not because the world is silent, but because we are no longer pulled by its noise. 3. Letting go isn't loss. It's liberation. There are moments in life when the hands that once held tightly begin to tremble, not from weakness, but from wisdom. Something inside us realizes, the tighter we grip, the less we feel, the more we carry, the further we drift from ourselves. And so we begin the quiet, terrifying, beautiful journey of letting go. In the Buddhist view, letting go is not a surrender to emptiness, but a return to wholeness. It is not a failure of desire, but a redirection of it. We do not let go because we have no choice. We let go because we finally see clearly. What we once believed would save us, the approval, the achievement, the possession, was never built to carry the weight of our freedom. Letting go is not passive. It is not resignation. It is an act of courage. To release something that once defined us is to step into a space that feels both unfamiliar and boundless. And yet, that is the nature of liberation. It does not offer certainty, only truth, the truth that everything we cling to eventually decays, changes, disappears. The truth that freedom is not found in the act of acquiring, but in the quiet art of relinquishing. In the forests where monks have walked barefoot for centuries, there is a teaching that echoes without words. Nothing in nature clings. The tree lets go of its leaves. The river lets go of each drop. The clouds let go of form. Even the mountain, in time, surrenders its stone to the wind. And yet, there is no sorrow in this, only rhythm. only release. But humans resist. We cling not just to things, but to stories. Stories about who we are, what we deserve, how things should be. These stories build our identity, but they also become our cage. We replay our wounds. We defend our opinions. We protect our version of reality as if it were truth, even when it isolates us. And when life asks us to soften, to open, to release, our first response is fear. If I let go, what will be left? Buddhism answers, only what is real. Letting go strips away illusion. It doesn't erase memory or responsibility. It doesn't make us indifferent. On the contrary, it opens space for genuine connection. When we are no longer preoccupied with ownership of people, outcomes, self-image, we begin to see the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. We see others not as characters in our drama, but as fellow travelers on a path of impermanence. This is why in Buddhist meditation, the breath is not controlled but observed. It comes. It goes. We do not chase it. We do not hold it. We trust it. This simple act of watching the breath becomes a metaphor for life itself. Let it come. Let it go. Stay present. That is enough. The mind, however, is conditioned otherwise. It believes letting go means defeat. That if we forgive, we condone. That if we step away, we lose. That if we soften, we become vulnerable. But Buddhism teaches that true power lies not in control, but in understanding. And understanding always leads to release. Letting go is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong practice, a daily returning. We let go of anger, not because it is wrong, but because it burns us. We let go of jealousy, not because we shouldn't feel it, but because it poisons the joy we already have. We let go of the need to always be right, to always win, to always be more, because in that release, something softer emerges. Compassion, stillness, clarity. The irony is that the more we let go, the more we actually receive. Not in the way the world measures gain, but in the deeper realm of being. We receive spaciousness. We receive moments unburdened by expectation. We receive relationships not built on need, but on presence. And we begin to notice beauty in ordinary places, in the steam rising from a cup of tea, in the silence between words, in the breath that reminds us we are still here. There is an ancient story of a monk who carried a heavy sack on his back. When asked what enlightenment felt like, he dropped the sack and stood up straight. "Ah," he said, "just like this." When asked what happens after enlightenment, he picked the sack back up, but this time, he smiled. The difference was not in the load, but in the one who carried it. This is the essence of letting go. Life may still offer us challenges. Responsibilities remain, but how we hold them changes. We no longer grip out of fear. We hold with awareness, and when it is time, we release without regret. For many, the idea of non-attachment sounds cold or distant, but in its truest form, it is the warmest way to live. It allows others to be free. It honors their path, their timing, their truth. It lets love breathe. It lets the heart open without closing around what it loves. To love without owning, to give without demanding, to care without controlling. That is the freedom of letting go. The world will always offer reasons to cling, but the Dharma invites us to rest in the space beyond reason, in the quiet, knowing that we are enough, even when we hold nothing, that our worth is not tied to what we achieve, that our peace is not contingent on getting our way, Letting go is not the end of the journey. It is the doorway into the present. It is the unlearning of effort, the unraveling of control. It is not about having less. It is about being less entangled. And so, we return, again and again, to the breath, to the body, to the moment. We sit. We feel. We notice the places that tighten and soften. We practice release, not as sacrifice, but as sanctuary. And in that sanctuary, we do not become less. We become free. For a life that has everything, but loses itself. It begins with a dream. Simple, innocent, a better life, a fuller life, a life where nothing is missing. We take the first steps with hope in our chest and fire in our eyes. We work harder. We climb. We achieve. One milestone leads to another. A degree, a job, a promotion, a home, a name, a following. The world watches and applauds. From the outside, we are the ones who made it, but something within begins to whisper, a quiet question we can't quite shake. Why, with everything in place, does something still feel out of place? In the language of the Buddha, this is not a failure. It is a signpost, a subtle doorway into truth, a truth the modern world rarely names, that you can possess everything and still lose yourself. The world teaches us to measure life by accumulation, more success, more comfort, more recognition, but the Dharma teaches us to measure life by presence, more awareness, more clarity, more compassion. One path grows the image of the self. The other returns us to its essence. The person who has everything is not always the person who is whole. One can own a mansion and be spiritually homeless. One can be surrounded by admiration, yet feel utterly unseen. One can have the perfect life on paper, yet lie awake at night, restless and afraid, to ask why the silence feels so heavy. Buddhism does not condemn success. It only questions whether that success is aligned with understanding. The danger is not in the having. It is in the forgetting. Forgetting who we are beneath the layers of roles, accomplishments, possessions, and performance. When we forget, we begin to drift, not away from society, but away from ourselves. This drift is subtle. It hides in busy schedules and full calendars. It hides behind polite smiles and polished resumes. It hides in the quiet moments when we avoid mirrors, not the ones made of glass, but the ones made of stillness. We begin to fear silence because silence reminds us that something essential is missing, not from the world, but from within. In Buddhist tradition, the self is not a fixed identity, but a flowing river. When we cling too tightly to a constructed identity, when we believe we are only the role we play, the title we hold, the possessions we own, we dam the river. We forget that we were never just one thing. We are breath and body. We are fear and tenderness. We are the sky before the name. The cost of forgetting is immense. It is not paid in dollars or fame. It is paid in peace, in joy, in the depth of relationships, in the ability to sit quietly without distraction. It is paid when we no longer know what we feel, unless someone else affirms it. When we lose the compass of our own heart, a life that has everything can still be hollow. In fact, it often is, because the more we have, the more we must protect, the more we achieve, the more we must maintain, the more we show, the more we fear being seen. And so we build walls instead of bridges. We wear masks instead of resting in authenticity. This is not a moral failing. It is the natural result of a world that overvalues the visible and undervalues the real, a world where stillness is mistaken for laziness, where softness is mistaken for weakness, where questioning is mistaken for doubt. In such a world, to return to the self is a radical act. Buddhist practice offers that return, not through ideology, but through intimacy. Intimacy with the breath, intimacy with the body, intimacy with the present moment. It asks us to pause, not to withdraw from life, but to see it more clearly, to peel back the layers and rediscover what is always there but rarely touched, our own undivided presence. Sometimes the one who sits quietly in a modest room is far richer than the one who travels the world in search of peace. Because the one who sits knows that peace is not out there. It is in the relationship between breath and attention, between stillness and surrender. To lose the self in the noise of having is to forget the simplicity of being. And yet, this forgetting is not the end. It is the beginning of return. The return begins when we ask different questions. Not, what more can I get? But, what have I forgotten to feel? Not, how do I fix this life? But, where did I stop listening? Not, how do I stand out? But, where am I hiding? Letting go is not always about release. Sometimes it is about remembrance. Remembering the child who once played without needing to prove. Remembering the breath that once rose without anxiety. Remembering that before the world told us who to be, we already were. This return is not glamorous. It won't be celebrated. It may not be understood by those around us. But it is the most important journey we can make. The journey from performance to presence. A life that has everything but loses itself is a life in exile. But the gate is always open. The path back is not lit by answers, but by attention. Not by possessions, but by presence. Not by doing more, but by being fully here. In the quiet teachings of Buddhism, we are reminded that the most profound truths are the simplest. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to climb further, grasp harder, run faster. You only need to come home, not to a place, but to a moment, to a breath, to the truth of your own being. And when you do, you may find that everything you were chasing was never missing. It was simply waiting for you to stop running. A life that is everything may impress the world, but a life that remembers itself fully, softly, honestly. That is what liberates the heart. What if the more we own, the more we drift from who we are? In this journey, we explore the unseen weight of possession and the quiet freedom of letting go. If you believe wisdom is worth remembering, subscribe to Trandy Wisdom, where every story brings you back to what matters most.